What's up, flooring family? Welcome to the Huddle. We're here every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central to discuss maintaining forward progress in your flooring career. Pretty much any trade career, really, but since we're all in flooring, that's where we live. This week we're going to be talking about, yeah, that's what it's about. We're going to be talking about bidding. If you'll remember a couple of weeks ago, we were discussing estimating best practices. And although they can be very similar, we kind of look at estimating and bidding kind of in two very connected silos. So the bidding to me is more of what you deliver to your customer. Your estimating's in-house. You take all that data and you create an actual proposal. So some of the best practices on delivery of proposals to general contractors and as well as end users, or maybe even your, a residential end user. I'll just kick it off with a couple of things. One is when we're sending out proposals to our general contractors, we try to have consistency from an image and data delivery standpoint to the GC. So our bid proposal forms are all the same. They're written in a PDF format so that the different estimators or project executives sending out bids can't go off the rails too far, so that the format of the proposal is always the same. It always has, our project notes, our job-specific exclusions, and then our standard exclusions that apply to almost all of our projects. The difference between bidding to a general contractor or bidding to an end user is typically with a general contractor, we're bidding off a set of plans and specs. So we'll state that we're bidding per plans and specifications, dated this date, and these are the scopes we're bidding.
From this drawing.
This sheet, this date. We recognize any addendums that we've gotten prior to bid, which is important because we've had plenty of times not be delivered an addendum, and it did affect our scope, and we had to revise our bid. And the GC that receives those bids, knowing that I did not recognize a particular addendum that had come out, he knew that he needed to let me know, get me the addendum. I was able to revise the bid before, the bid time. But with end users, I typically go deeper and give them an actual scope of work, and I'll build that scope of work out, telling them more detail on every single item that I have figured. So that's kind of how I do it. What about you guys? How's that landscape look for you guys?
You probably should have let us go first, Paul. You didn't have to lay it all out like that. Now we're going to go and say, oh, we just get crayons and colored pencils and draw them a picture.
well, something's going right. I mean, Daniel's in Las Vegas with a gold wall behind him, so.
It's all about perception, right? It's all about perception. That's why they're doing that. But we're still very much in the learning process of it. Like I think from starting out, getting a lot of practice in the labor only, and then realizing how many details were actually left out when we were awarded the project, when we helped bid on it, helped us kind of structure our own process, so to speak. Now, we do have, like I said right before we started, we don't have like an identical template that we all work off of, right? I mean, they're all similar because they come from the same program, but the conversation we just had prior to made me realize that maybe we should have an identical checklist, so to speak, with everything like that. But
Well, that's what this thing's about. A lot of times
Yeah.
frankly, we're friends and we talk on the phone, but at the end of the day, I mean, we learn from each other. You guys have taught me
Right.
stuff and I've hopefully brought value to you guys as well. And that's what I think this is about from
Most
our
definitely.
audience as well as us together here.
There's plenty of ways that you can do it, right? Because everyone has their own way. And typically when we're doing it, we're like when we were talking about estimating, Measure Square, that's the program we use. So when we're building out you're doing our takeoffs and stuff and adding products in there, once we submit the bid, it's all line items. So you get all your materials and all your labor line items 100% there with us already. But depending on who you're submitting the bid to, we won't, give them the price for every single line item. It's going to be, this is what's included. Then after that, we explain, this is the scope. This is what's excluded. And then right at the bottom, we always say, like, the biggest thing is, one, prep is cosmetic only. And two, moisture testing should be done by a third party, not us.
Can you go in? You just brought something up there that's really intriguing to me. When you say cosmetic, is that understood by the clients?
So,
because I think that's a great way to say it, and we put like this plus or minus. We try to be like small cracks and variations within an eighth inch, excluding skim coating. I mean, it's all this stuff that you got to say. Yeah. Cosmetic is a really kind of encompassing term to use, right. I think.
And I think we got that from William Thornton from Target Sports, and that's what, talked to him on the phone. My brother talked to him on the phone a few times, and it's like, that's one of the things he said. He said, include in your bid that prep is cosmetic only, because anytime something structural happens, this concrete is chipping up. Well, I don't do the concrete. I don't do anything structural. I'm just making the top coat pretty so that way it can accept flooring.
And what would you guys not do in part of that cosmetic flooring? Let's say at a saw joint, you have a 1/2 inch lift from one side. It cracked. The concrete did what it was supposed to do and cracked at the saw joint, and then lifted, and you got a 1/4 inch, or let's say a 1/2 inch difference between one side of the saw joint and the other.
I think that all depends on how we bid it too, right? Because sometimes we'll include in there that like
light grinding or something like that.
Grinding.
I'll be specific.
Or we'd like to go walk the job first, so we'll say we'll put in there this, and we'll mark it on the print too, and we'll say this cut joint was peaked, so it includes grinding on this cut joint. But especially when you're bidding and you're going in blind and you can't really see anything, like say new construction, you get the plans before anything is even going up, and then you walk in there and the construction of the concrete, they put in a bunch of additives. You walk in there and every cut joint is peaked up, right? So what we do is, we assess that after the fact, and since they already know that it's cosmetic only, and if it's something like that, you have to look at the science behind the concrete and explain to them kind of, all right, we can grind this down, but after we do that and we patch it and we put resilient floor on it, because a lot of LVTs or sheet vinyls, it could, the moisture in the concrete could equalize, and then this could essentially create a divot or something like that. So we kind of explain all that to them, and it's like, does it mess with the structure still? I don't necessarily think so, unless you're like drilling and putting in like spray foam underneath it, trying to make it not move. But we just have to be really thorough with explaining to them. But that's the thing is once you read some of these bid specs, they are not thorough in their explanations either.
Yeah, which is
They
why
leave it
we
very
have to
gray.
have exclusions and things like that
Yep.
because it's not perfectly clear. You got to draw the line somewhere. And even on, as you use the term cosmetic, you know, basically the way we look at it is we'll do all your cracks and saw joints and small holes, but then you get into a situation where you get to a job, say it's new concrete, and get to a job and it's getting VCT down hallways and it's chattered everywhere, just complete chatter. It needs a grind and skim. We would not do that as part of our project. That would be a change order.
Right.
Do you guys approach it the same way?
We I think that's where we are
Yes and
starting
no.
to.
Yes, we are starting to. So the problem that we're having is, and that we've had in the beginning, is that we approach everything as the installer, right? Like, even if you were to look at some of our proposals or bids, like they're in systematic order. Like we have all the material at top, and the material is in sequential order from install, from start to finish. And same thing with all the line items. We start with the removal, and I work all the way down until the finished product, right? Because I'm doing the job in my head, and I'm making sure I'm not missing anything. Um, so we were very much all inclusive in 100% of our bids in the beginning, and started realizing that, man, we're getting our asses handed to us on this. How are these, like, why are they coming in so low? And then through the Freedom of Information Act, you can actually have access to some of the bids that you've lost
Publicly on
to
the public
other
side.
companies. Yeah, on the public side. Sorry, on the public side, not like private anything in the private
Yeah.
sector. But so we start looking at that, and then we start like deconstructing our proposal and seeing what was left out and how it was left out. And fortunately for us, we've been around for a long time, not just as preferred flooring, but we've been around long enough where people are willing to answer questions, right? Like, everybody excludes everything. They just exclude it and say not included, or this is excluded from proposal, and they have a whole list of things, and it's like, oh, so that's where the flaw for the contractor or the end user. They're just looking for the bottom number, and they see that one number. That's all they're looking at. It doesn't matter if you have one sheet or 1,000 sheets. They just look at that last number and say finalist, finalist, finalist. So we're learning that, but
Yeah,
fortunately for us, some guys say, let's go look at their line items. Let's see why they're a little bit more. Because I know that they're including a lot of
Losing you.
dollars. They look at it differently.
I would say, um, we try to do it as fair as you can, but you can only bid if you're bidding off a set of plans and specs. You can only bid what the documents are telling you. You start digging in and using your spidey senses in flooring too deep, and you're gonna get thrown out unless you give them a reason. Here's a little trick we use. Like if there's a reason in the documents that we feel like somebody may not notice something, or if it's in a really obscure spot in the plans that we think it's going to make us high, we put that like specifically including this thing, whatever it is. Let's call it, some moisture mitigation, but it's not in its own spec and it's only listed on a detail in the drawing or something. And I won a job in Ponca City, a $380,000 job over this. And it was because I specifically stated that I have moisture mitigation figured underneath all flooring as stated on this sheet, detailed this. And the value of that was $120,000. So
Yeah.
I had it in my bid, but I also told them the value of that and that it was included in my overall number. That made them make phone calls and
And no one
ended
else
up
included it, right?
correct. So it went back out for rebid, and I ended up winning that job. So you can use something like that to go ahead and add it. One thing I wouldn't do, it's not a trick. It's just, I don't send out an RFI on it. If I feel like I have something like that that's going to make a GC question someone else's low bid versus mine, and I got a note that I can put in there that'll make them think, oh my God, we got to go with them. They read everything. This is obviously in the drawings because he listed the sheet and the detail number and everything. And in last minute, I've been in the war rooms, as they call them, of GCs plenty of times. They are scrambling. And if you can give them a big note stating, a lot of times they'll go with your number because even though you're high, because they know you have everything figured. And especially if you are telling them where you've seen that in the documents. So
I like that.
I don't send out an RFI because I don't want them to go to an RFI, send it out for all bidders to find what I found, and use that. I've also, I'm kind of spilling the beans here, but I've also found notes in specs, particularly in the tile spec, and they'll say, for example, they'll say, waterproofing membrane or something, or they'll say epoxy grout per TCNA 118, blah, 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 whatever. I'll go look that up and see if there's a discrepancy between the TCNA book guideline that they're referencing and what they're telling me to do. And if there is a discrepancy, particularly if it's in my favor, I will note that and say, we're going per TCNA guidelines, and you're pretty safe in that manner in doing that. And you also then end up creating a scenario where you can get a competitive advantage over your competition just by, kind of digging in a little deeper and finding the method that works best.
So you're saying a little bit of knowledge about the product and some extensive training prior to doing the estimating could actually benefit your bidding opportunities. Wow. Who would have thought?
Well, not only that, and if he ends up losing that and someone else wins it and it's not per TCNA, and then that job ends up getting messed up, they're going to end up losing a bunch more money anyways.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and on top of that, if you're going per TCNA guidelines, which a lot of times that's where it's found. That's where your advantage will be found, because they want you to install per industry standards, regardless of what an architect tells you to do most times. Because if they're telling you to go outside the industry standard, then they can start to get scary close to voiding a warranty. But so if you're laying on the side of industry standard, and it's going to give you the advantage because you took the time to go into your TCNA handbook and actually look into it and discover that, you can create an advantage for yourself.
I like the way you said that you separated that number and actually put it in there. This is the cost of the mitigation. Because I talked to an electrical engineer. He's actually my son's baseball coach. And he said that when they go out to bids, especially when it's someone, they're training someone new, they say you have to ask these questions to make sure all these other people are going to be including this stuff, because we're not going to not include it. So we need to make sure that either they're going to include it or the GC knows that they're supposed to include it, but they didn't on their bid. That way it's a level playing field for them. But I can kind of see it both ways, to where it's an advantage for you if you do and an advantage if you don't.
Yeah, either way, you're in a better situation than not doing anything, obviously. But if you're reliant on them getting an RFI or sending an RFI and then getting an addendum, now you have leveled the playing field. You're back on par with everybody. What I did was, it also makes me come off more of an expert, because we did this, because we found this and this is here, and you when you note it like that, I'm giving them the amount to deduct off my overall bid if they want to get apples to apples. So I'm still giving them the mechanism to get there if they need to. But in the
Well,
in
I
the
like that.
heat of the
And
battle, it doesn't always happen. They're just like, use that number because it's got to be right. And sometimes
so
if they
it's
have time, they'll even go check. But
well, I have a question for you. So well, it's kind of like a little statement, and then followed by a question. Um, the statement that I'm going to make is that essentially, when you're doing that and you're breaking it out and you're providing that information to the contractor, you're showing them that you have their client or the end user's best interest uh, at play there. And I guess my question is would be and sorry if I sound green or a little naive, but when they have these final meetings and they're going over these final dollar amounts, do you think that some of this information is actually shared with the end user or the guy who's paying bills at the end of the day for this whole thing? Or is this they've already got their budget and their approval and they're not sharing anything as long as they're within the dollar amount or those parameters?
it
Um,
kind of it depends on the end user, but there's a lot of times they get down to the nitty gritty with the end user and have to explain to them why we use this guy or why we use that guy. And a lot of times, if you've positioned yourself as the expert, you using this example, which this was a public safety center down in Ponca City. They had to go back and rebid the thing, and they had to go show the owner why now, as a construction manager, this bid has to be redone. And then we got to rebid it again, and we won it. But we would have not won the job had that note been on there. They would have gave the job to the other crew,
And then
and
no
that would have
moisture
been it.
mitigation would have been done. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
thing too, is especially when you have it separated, it can be to the point to where this is how much it's going to cost for this, but after the moisture readings come back, if you don't need it, then you just take that line item right out of there.
Yep. Yep.
I like that. I like that. That's a
So
great piece of information there.
qualifying your bid is and making it clear how what you have figured and why. Um, Sometimes it'll kick you out, but we find more often than not, you'll find these little nuggets in the jobs where, I mean, we've had it from just bathroom elevations calling for Schluter metal, but then the finish schedule calling for bullnose. Something that simple, we find out what's the cheapest one, and that's what we're going to figure.
Oh, it's funny. You just
Because
reminded me of a
both are
conversation.
there. Which way do you go? If all things equal, like it's a good set of elevations and a good finish schedule, I mean, which one do you trust? So we'll find
So,
out
so,
which one's the cheapest and submit on that.
And then
And
once they figure out, oh no, we wanted this. Oh, we already won, so this is the change order for this then.
correct. Yeah. And I know that change orders get a bad rap.
They do, but a lot of the time it's out of our control.
Well, and I'm not against them. I don't think they're a bad thing all the time. I mean, the bottom line is the architects love you guys if you're on this call, but they get paid 6% typically of a project. So on a $10 million job, they're not doing too bad to create a good set of bid documents and then manage that process through.
Right.
With a good GC, the manage the process through part is basically them approving the general contractor's application for payments for the owner. I mean, at some point, the GC is doing most of the management, but in the early days, doing the homework and really getting those plans and specs done, that's what they're expected to do. And so all you can do is read off of those. And a lot of times, your expertise is going to tell you something shouldn't be done that way. That's when I would say, if you feel that way, clearly note it and make sure that, sometimes we'll even give the cost. For example, we did a bunch of elevated bathroom shower floors. Well, the specs were so terrible. The drawings were not great. it showed that it was depressed. And so we figured mud setting had nothing to say about waterproofing or what type of, it had a plumbing pan liner, the rubberized plumbing pan liners that are rubber sheet, which are
Mm-hmm.
terrible for a commercial depressed floor
Yeah.
system, especially when you're only mud packing, say 2.5, 3 inches. You need a liquid applied. And then there's certain waterproofing membranes that like Mape HPG can be used as a plumbing pan liner if you do it per their instructions. All that being said, I knew that our number, that process is way more expensive than somebody taking a piece of plastic or a piece of rubber sheet and laying it in. And a lot of times the plumbers do that. So the flooring guys don't even do that part a lot of times on jobs, putting the actual pan liner in. It'll go down when they put their drain in, and then you hope it doesn't get a hole in it, which is another reason never to use them. If you're on this call, I'd say try to switch those things out for liquid pan liners anytime you can. But I knew my bid was going to be higher. And I said, per spec is my bid. Here is what's really recommended by TCNA. Please add $27,000. They accepted my base bid, and we ended up change ordering to that number.
So
That's awesome.
Kelly
That,
Cassidy
that
says,
information is great.
putting details in the room finish schedule, does that ensure being seen and followed? I think that just depends on how thorough someone's going to be with reading through the paperwork and then actually going through and then, like you said, checking out the discrepancies. This shouldn't be done that way. And it's either, like you said, you go on there and say, this is the base bid, how you're speccing it. This is what should be added to get it, to spec per these standards. And either that or submit an RFI, right?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll put in what I like tile the most in this because there's the most variances here. But
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, and you got a handbook that is recognized by everyone, right? The TCNA guidelines, right? That's been around forever. We don't really have something that strong in resilient or in carpet that holds its weight as much as the TCNA guidelines do, the TCNA handbook. So a lot of times, if they'll reference something if they don't reference anything, like this job I was telling you about is a multifamily with, recess slab, student housing actually, with recess slabs for the showers. They didn't put nothing in there. So I referenced the TCNA guideline. Even if I lose the job, I'm kind of trying to help them out, and I'm positioning our company as the experts. I mean, we're using the industry standard, and it shows that we at least open that book and consider it when we're bidding.
I love that. You just you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's and making sure that they're aware of that.
Right.
Something you just made me think about too is and I don't want to get too far off track, but if we have to dissect these plans and all of their terms and go by their master contract, why are they not dissecting our bids? Right? Like are they? It almost
because they got 6 months to build the drawings and about 60 minutes to get the bids in, because people, subs, none of us send our bids in super early to GCs because you don't want them shocked, and you don't want them to call their buddy and even I've had it happen where even when I had a good company that I've done a ton of business with, some PM from another company comes and joins their company, and now he's in charge of running this bid, and he's friends with someone else and picks up the phone and lets them know. So, they're getting bids in up to the last 15 minutes of the job.
Yep. Typically, if a bid is due at 2 o'clock, I'm submitting at 1:55.
Yeah. Like you're submitting within 10, 15 minutes of the project because you don't want to get shopped, do all that work for nothing. And so they don't have time unless you bold something out really big. And even the bigger GCs who have they'll have an estimator that just handles finishes, and then an estimator that just handles the structural, and then an estimator that just handles, mechanical and electrical or something of that nature.
So,
Uh, you know, I still think best practice is to make it clear what you're bidding and then also clear what you're not bidding in some cases. Um, so it just depends on the bid, obviously. You can go through 1,000 different scenarios, but the real key is what can you put on that bid that gives you a strategic advantage? Right?
right. And how can you approach it?
It's a competition. And like I said earlier, change orders are not the demon that everybody makes them out to be. They're necessary as part of the construction process. And the better that the architect is, typically, the better that the less amount of change orders you're going to get. I mean, the better the documents are, the least questions there are during bid time, and you're going to get a more, accurate bid from all parties. But sometimes that's not possible either, and sometimes the owner doesn't want to pay the architect as much money as it would take to, kind of take it past the finish line. And so the architect has to kind of pull back in some ways on some of the services they provide, and that's when you get kind of a crappy set of drawings. So anyway, it's about kind of trying to find the nugget that, at least this part of the discussion has been about, like, where's the nuggets that you can either expose or take advantage of that give you the best possibility of winning the job. As long as you approach that in an ethical manner and you're not trying to, like, clearly cheat somebody. But the fact is, if you're using your knowledge to give yourself an advantage, that's an earned advantage.
Right, and not only that is knowing your reps to, especially when they're giving you free reign for like value engineering or something like that, and it's really common these days, especially because you just can't find some of these products, or they're 60, 90 days out when after the bid is won, they're like, we're starting next week. Like, when can you get in here?
Yeah.
So we had a project that was like that when, they spec'd the carpet. It was super expensive. It wasn't going to get there till like 2 months after they wanted to be done with the project. And I was like, look, we can go with this other product. It's the same color scheme. It's the same face weight. It's going to perform the exact same, and it's going to save the client $8,500. It's like, not all change orders are bad either. Sometimes, you give them money back. And the crazy thing is with that is, by doing that, sometimes your margins actually go up because it's a less expensive product and you have a lot more wiggle room there to work with. So your margins can go up a little bit even though you're selling a less expensive product.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when you're kind of talking about price per effort. So you got to make more margin on lower end goods than you have to on a higher end good. That's how we look at things. And so if we have a $65 yard carpet, we're not going to bid that at the same margin as a $10 yard carpet.
Correct.
So, the effort doesn't change. So you need to make sure your margins are covering all your overhead costs, unless you get into your estimating practices of figuring overhead and approximate hours of overhead and all this management fee and building that all out. We do not. We look at it like, this is our heavy costs. We're going to mark up this line item this much, this line item this much, and on through. And then we produce our bid off of that. So as we were talking here, presenting of the bid is really what this is all about. Give yourself a reason to be looked at, right? It's kind of like the resume thing. I was taught a long time ago, like, have your bid form a professional looking bid form. Your guys' sounds like it's a professional bid form. You want it to be something that stands out a bit. And then B is just make sure that you're and also recognizable. Like, if you guys are the firm, I've talked to plenty of people. You guys up there have a great reputation in Michigan. So when somebody sees your form with your logo in the same spot, it's the same. They their brain recognizes it, and they at least want to look at your number.
It
Because
goes
you,
back to the branding episode that we talked about, right?
Yeah.
You gotta stay on brand all the time.
yep,
Once your brand is recognizable, then that automatically makes people think, "Ooh, I know who that is. Let's take a look at that one."
yeah, they at least
Oh,
want to pull
speaking
your
of that,
number, pull your bid up, and take a look at it.
Even a
And then
second
if
look
you actually,
sometimes.
and
yeah.
exactly, and if you give them a reason then to consider it, which is when, if you find an advantage, you list it, you say why you bid it this way, um, then it makes them just think for a second. In that heated moment, they have to think: do I go with this number with these guys who always give me good, solid numbers, but they're $5,000 higher, but they also said this thing that they're looking at is worth 3,800 bucks. So really it's $1,200.
Right.
Now they're considering, you're stopping them in the heat of the fire to consider something. And brand is a big part of that, Daniel, like you said.
Yeah, well, you want them to depending on what it is, right? The whole branding portion of it, like it's if they're looking at ours, they're like, oh, well, this is this price, and like, oh, well, these ones are like this. Like, all right, what are they missing? Like, I know that this project, this is they're bidding this because this is their strengths. This is what they do. This is what they're known for. And then over here is they're not really known for that, but so now they're missing something, and it's not a bad thing to have them look at it like that. And hopefully they look at every project like that. Will it happen like that? Probably not, but that's okay.
Well,
Like you said, it
I'll
is a
give a
competition
plug.
to some extent.
I'll give a plug to, I won't say the name, but we have a competitor that only does tile. And man, when they are good, they're really good. They do good installation. They're a good company. When they're bidding when certain large tile jobs are bid, it's tough to beat them. Like, they have that kind of nailed down. Um, we get our fair share, but it's just on these really particular tile type projects. They're just known for doing it the way that it needs to be done. So I've lost a job or two to them even when I was low. And that's not because I suck. It's just because they've done that good. So
Yeah,
kudos to them.
they've earned that. They've earned that. Then that's what it
They,
is.
And
They've
we've been
earned
in
that.
that position too, to where we're considered the experts in what we do. So when you're going through the post bids and stuff, they'll straight up tell you, they're like, you guys weren't the low bid, but we sell them as yes, you can go with them, but these are the potential issues that you might be. If you go with these guys, it's pretty much a hands-off approach. As soon as they get on the project, everything is going to go and be installed exactly how it should be.
yeah. Yeah. And you'll win we all have our deals where we, get chose over. We're not always low. That's for sure. A lot of times, but it's a service on the backside that you're talking about, or the known for expertise. But it's just an example how it's not just possible for one company. I have a company here that we battle with on those jobs that, like I said, they'll get the nod on the big tile jobs that are really complex, Olympic sized pools, that kind of stuff. Shower, steam rooms off of it, and saunas and showers, and onto a pool deck and down into the pool and all that. We've done auditoriums before, or natatoriums before, but a lot of them, those guys are going to get. So anyway, just showing you that the branding is a big piece of your bidding being considered during bid day. And so anybody new out there in the audience that has, wondered why some companies maybe win a lot of work and why others don't. Part of it's the branding. And so I would, take advice from a previous episode. I wish I knew that episode number, but we talked about branding and the importance of that in pretty good detail.
Yes, it's not who you know, but it's who knows you, and it's become very very helpful in the last couple of years for us to kind of shift gears and have that different mindset. But also, anybody out there who's got other ideas on some of that and other angles, like let us know. Like we're still learning too, man. Like we're just sharing what we know now and what works for us now. But man, like I'm open. I'd like to learn a lot more.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's really been kind of special about this podcast is that's the attitude of the podcast. Like we want to learn too, and we'd love more interaction live on the podcast. Thank you for everybody who comments and likes our stuff on
100%
media networks, but we'd love for you to come on and listen to us and chime in with some Q&A, be heard, and it can make the podcast people sometimes bring up different questions than what we can think of in our in the heat of the moment here. But so I encourage you, this is my plug, to like and subscribe us on our YouTube, if that's where you're consuming it, or if you're catching it on one of our social channels or one of Preferred Flooring social channels. Please give it a thumbs up. Drop a comment in. Maybe you agreed with some of this. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you disagreed.
Maybe you can teach us something, right? That's what it's all about.
Start the conversation. So
maybe you have the most bomb bid form out there that nobody knows about, and you're willing to share some of that information with the industry, right? And you just had that. You're sitting on it. Is burning a hole in your pocket. And you need to share it, and you just give us a call and help us out, man. Like. Well, we'll share your brand. You share some information. Come on now, let's scratch each other's backs, man. Like we're all in this together to some extent, right?
Yeah. Well, there is a element of all of us flooring guys trying to band together, and I think you see that when you go to the conferences. I just got back from two, pretty much back to back, from Fuse Alliance, which I'm a Fuse member in our area, and then FCICA, and they were both great. A lot of great learning opportunities, but that's also where you can do some of these discovery discussions with other flooring companies who are more than happy to help you. So, all right, guys, anything closing out on kind of bidding, post kind of getting your quantities and estimates from, whether you, again, just as a refresher, you can outsource this thing now. There's very professional companies doing it.
Kathy Case, Quantify was.
Yep.
She can help you out a ton.
Yep. She was on and went through a lot of stuff. I think that was I hope a lot of people have watched that, because that was a really good episode, I think. And I think if you pair that with this, you'll kind of get the big concepts on how to best estimate and then produce your proposal to your client.
Yeah, I think, just closing out is take nuggets from everyone that you talk to, just like we did, and include those in your inclusions and exclusions. Because like I said, everyone's going to want you, if they don't want you to do moisture testing, you got to let them know that it still needs to be done, whether it's in the documents or not, because you're liable as soon as you start installing. If you don't ask for results or anything, that's you just bought that if anything happens, in most cases.
Yeah, and the reason that is, just to build on that for a quick second, is because it may not specifically say moisture testing, but what is it going to say is that, like, there's language typically in a set of specs that say, once you start installing, is indication of acceptance of substance.
Yep.
Right. So there's these little clauses everywhere throughout the documents that'll end up catching you anyway. So
And
take Daniel's advice.
yeah, and the other
Yeah,
one is
and
the floor prep being only cosmetic, because once you read over the specs and everything, and know your standards, because they'll stay in there. It sometimes it doesn't say anything. It just says floor prep to ASTM F710 standards, and then you're automatically required to know that. So
yeah, do some research.
yeah, just know
Yeah,
the
Um,
that
standards and
document's
know that
probably the
prep is cosmetic only.
that document's
um,
probably the closest thing that the resilient side has that I think gets leaned on a lot.
And all it is for
oh,
prep.
a
That's
lot,
it.
a lot. Um, I guess for me is if I were sharing advice with anybody, I would say don't be afraid to ask questions, even if you have to question yourself, right? Like if you miss it and you submit it, man, you missed it and you submitted it, man. Like don't rush through it if you don't have enough time to dedicate to doing a large bid after the estimate is done, then just don't try to rush it. Just say, you know what, call that time as learning experiences or experience period and move on to the next one, man. Like
At
there's no
least
sense
until
in
you're
rushing something.
comfortable. At least until you're
Yeah, yeah.
comfortable. I mean, there's going to be some times you stretch that out. We certainly skirt the line sometimes on, oh, should we bid this or should we not, and maybe walking away. Um, but once you've been doing it long enough, you can make some educated guesses. I wouldn't, I fully recommend going in with full knowledge, but every once in a while, especially on branded jobs where you've done 30 of those hotels in the last
Right.
5 years or something, and you got some questions, you can go off of your experience and say, okay, I'm pretty sure this is how it's going to be, and go ahead in that case then and do what I was talking about earlier. Put it on your bid form. You figured it this way because there was no documentation telling you, and so you figured it this way.
So we do have a
Um,
question from LinkedIn right here from Eric. He says, estimating and quantifying materials are not equal. Any thoughts on why our industry, by and large, has salespeople handling the pricing of jobs? Other trades and GCs rely on estimators to put numbers together, but in the flooring world, it seems like an estimator's role ends with the takeoff.
Yeah, I that's a tough one. I know plenty of companies have salespeople. All of our bids in our company is produced with either project managers or
Mhm.
estimators, and then still reviewed by a project manager or project executive, because I feel like you have to have somebody with applicable knowledge to getting work done produce the bid, you know,
Yeah,
not just a salesman trying to sell something. And
Right.
that, if you get on Facebook and read, the salesmen are the
That's
most
what I was
hated.
gonna get into, because you go on there and it's like on some of these groups they're like sell, 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 worry about everything else later, and it's like
yeah,
they don't care about anything that goes into the project. It's just what you said. They're just basing it on knowledge from something else that they've done. So if you just throw a number at it and it sticks, hey, you just won the job. And then that's when you have all these installers complaining, hey, you missed this. There's no transitions. You didn't
yeah.
include any floor prep. This material shouldn't be installed here. It's like there's so much that goes into it, and the salesmen are just sell, 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 and then that's where that fine line is between people like us that are trying to include everything and not miss anything, and then you got those people that are just, here's a number, accept it, and then try and get change orders later.
So and you know what? And I know we said this in closing a long time ago, but
No, let's go.
that is you get 100% correct on all of that. As there is a difference between a salesman and the bid process, right? Like if you have a salesman who is from start to finish, you're only the customer or the client or the end user's only point of contact. There's going to be a lot of information that isn't going to be relayed and it's going to be missed. And not only that, there's going to be a disconnect from the installation crew and the salesman too, because they're not always going to be on the same page. So
Well, because
um,
think about it.
it,
Sorry
It's
to
just totally
interrupt you.
no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, no, I get it. And just to add to that is recently, I just had to have it because we do labor only for some other stores too. And recently I had to have a conversation and send an email out to a salesperson that was, once he sold the job, he was done, 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 right? Didn't follow up, didn't do anything. And I'm sorry, but that doesn't fly with me, bro. Like, it's your job to communicate with the client. It's your job to do all this. I give you the information, but if you don't relay any of it, I can't talk final numbers with your client or the client at all. Like, that's supposed to be in you, right? And that's where it was very obvious, the disconnect from salesperson with zero flooring experience as far as the install, the processes, and the length of time, to someone who installs and works on the sales side as well.
Yeah. So in short, we don't have anybody with the title salesman or salesperson in our company. We have a business developer who goes out and finds opportunities and talks with developers and general contractors and architects and drums up new business. But salesman, we don't have one, because to me, the person's salesman, and what I was saying when I rudely interrupted you, was a salesman. Their job title's done when the sale's done, right?
Right.
Salesman. Like, you want a manager or an executive putting those numbers out. Any manager that approves a bid in our company, they're the ones who end up having to manage the job. And that's because they know we know that that's going to put in their head, like, I can't just scrum through this thing real fast, because I'm the one that's going to have to deal with any problems that come on the backside of winning the job and doing the project. So, having the manager involved from the beginning. We have estimators, but even our estimators don't just send out numbers. They quantify, they'll put the bid together, but then it has to go across the PM or project executive's desk for full approval and review.
So Eric did say, good answer.
Good way to put it, Eric.
Jorge says that's when he's glad that he measures his own projects and stuff, so he doesn't have to rely on someone measuring short. And when you physically do the job, you know exactly the entire process of how to put that puzzle piece together.
Yeah.
It's nice if you do. It's just it's more frequent in residential, obviously, to get out and measure the job. Some commercial, you get the opportunity. I'd say 20% of our jobs we get to field measure. But are you going to go through and field measure a 155,000 foot elementary school?
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. Yeah, you might go and verify a couple of dimensions. But that's about
you might
it.
measure some classrooms, but you're measuring the whole thing by hand out in the field it can get tough.
Back in the day, probably would have happened by me, right? Go with my colored pencils and my little graph paper and my ruler. Man,
not to say that it wouldn't be a better way to do it. It's just the time consuming nature of measuring something that you may not field measuring something on a large scale that you may not get awarded. You're investing a fair amount of time compared to doing a takeoff off of a set of drawings. So a lot of times, if I do go out to the field, I'll take a couple of key measurements and ask them, even if they have a coded floor plan, may not be to scale, but I can set it to scale and measure square and use my field measurements and take them from different parts of the building. Maybe I get 5 or 6 or 8 measurements and then apply that to that drawing.
Yep. That's what I do now. Back in the day, I'm just going to go measure everything. I like technology now-ish. Sometimes I hate it. I appreciate it when it works.
When it works.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, there's a lot out there. Again, just to recap this, proposals and in some consistent format. Make sure you're including, you're putting in your exclusions, specifically what you're excluding. Just a little note on ours where we have job specific exclusions. It's because we found when we added something to our standard exclusions, it was just a word or two, and it would get overlooked because it's in the same spot, same exclusion spot as all the other bids. So we added a spot for job specific exclusions. So maybe a remodel, we're going to specifically exclude moving, and that's where we'd put that kind of thing. And our standard exclusions is always, excessive, unforeseen floor prep, and we go through all that stuff. Final cleaning, protection of floors, that kind of stuff. So making your bid somewhat consistent. If you can find some nuggets by using the industry knowledge, whether it's, ASTM F710 for resilient or the TCNA handbook for tile, or something in CFI's stuff for carpet, or the Carpet and Rug Institute,
Right.
even
104
something
and
that
105.
gives you like this strategic advantage because of knowledge, and it's not a discrepancy in the drawings. It's something that brings you a nugget in knowledge. So, take advantage of those opportunities to win a job, and, don't be scared of change orders if they're warranted. I mean,
Yeah, you ain't gonna pay for everything that changes on a project. Don't think that you're gonna this is the number and I'm not gonna change anything. I just had a bid to where, it right in the spec it said that no change orders are gonna be allowed, and as soon as they accepted ours, something happened, and it was like, well, we're gonna need a change order, and they were like, okay, things happen. Sometimes it's things out of your control, and just know that. Don't let anyone bully you to take money out of your pocket when you know it's warranted, that it's not your fault, especially.
Yeah, just remember it's a business. You're in business. You're not.
We're here to make money.
Popularity contest. You're not. You want to have a good reputation and a good relationship with everybody, but at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for your employees, do what's right for your industry, do what's right for your business, and what's right for yourself. So, if you kind of look at it that way, you're doing your employees a disservice in many instances if you're taking these change orders. And there's always going to be some negotiating. Sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. But for the most part, just don't look at change orders as a terrible thing. And also don't look at them as a way to just put this rock bottom BS number in and then think you're going to go change order your way to profit. Don't do it that way either. That's unethical from the start. If you're underbidding a job and you think you're going to come in and become profitable through change orders, that's ridiculous. Bid the job appropriately, but don't be scared of valid change orders. They're necessary in our building practices.
I just want to know, let everyone know that before we started this, we said that this was going to be a really quick one, and then we ended up going the full time anyways. And FCI magazine did just put out an article online about the episodes that we have coming on this month. So go on there, see which one that you want to listen to. Definitely join the Zoom or any social medias and come and ask questions. Thank you for everyone that is on here saying hello. Dirk, Jorge, Kelly, Eric. We got.
Yeah, we love it.
We love
appreciate
it.
the feedback.
Thanks for the support.
Yep.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, I'm always on LinkedIn or any socials looking at your guys' work too. Like, I love it.
He's probably on LinkedIn a lot more than me. I'll have like 8,000 notifications by the time I click on the app, which is horrible. I should probably be better about that.
I think I can do better too, my friend. All right, guys. Well, that brings us to the end. I want to echo what Daniel just said, and Jose is, hey, thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Really do appreciate the feedback, and it feeds us, it gives us a reason. We're on episode 41, 42?
42.
42,
so,
yeah.
We're here. We're going to continue to be here, and your guys' participation makes it all worth it. And we hope that you grab some nuggets out of these conversations, and feel free to reach out to us and come on sometime. When you see one of those episodes that's on FCI Magazine's list that you may want to be on, reach out to supported Go Carerra.
Eduardo says, "Is there another Apple Watch this time?" No, no, but we'll probably put out some more notice for the next giveaway. I'm sure there'll be something popping up.
Yep. All right, guys. Once again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and as always, I've learned some stuff. So we'll see you guys next Tuesday and chat in between.
Sounds good. Take it easy.
Good one, everyone. Thanks.
Bye, guys.